It was unbelievable.
Yeah, that is.
I wasn't present, but
so did you attach the estate to get paid?
It was, we were repossessing a computer from a software supplier outside of Chicago in Rolling Meadows. And the man tried to attack the sheriff, and in attacking the sheriff, he collapsed and died.
Boy, that is a topper.
Yeah. We didn't do too many repossessions, and we didn't use that approach ever again.
I was giving a collection presentation to a group of people, and I had them go around the room telling me what was the weirdest excuse they ever heard. And this little mousy woman at the end, she goes, he died. I said, oh, we've all heard that one. I had a guy, his grandmother died twice. And she was literally on the phone. She was on the phone. She heard a gagging noise and a thump. The guy she was trying to collect the money from dropped dead while she was on the collection call. So very similar. Yeah, talk about traumatic.
Hey everyone. So Bob, we are getting live in the next 30 seconds. We are already live on LinkedIn.
Okay, terrific.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody, if you're listening, we're going to wait a few minutes for others to join us, and then we'll start the program. Welcome aboard.
Excellent. It's exciting to be here.
Almost excited as much as Michelle.
Okay. We'll wait another couple minutes.
Yeah, how many people are we expecting on this call today?
Well, we had 190 plus registrants, so hopefully everything being possible, we'll have a lot of folks.
Excellent. Yeah, how many people are we expecting on this call today?
Yeah, okay, for those of you who are just joining us, we're just waiting for a couple more minutes, give everybody a chance to join us. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sorry for the long silence, everyone. We've just waited about 2 more minutes, and then we'll begin. Okay, let's get started. We have a great panel today. Very excited with the people involved here, and it's an interesting topic: credit talent versus cost cutting. What does that mean exactly? Well, if you have a successful team, you have people who are well trained and competent. they're going to be more productive, and in the long run, it's going to really save your company overhead expense and a lot of other benefits. So we're going to talk about a variety of things today. We're going to talk about how do you hire people that are really qualified to do the jobs that we have in our credit departments. How do you prepare your staff for promotability, or even in many cases, you have people that pass through the credit department and they go on to other areas of your company. How do you prepare them to do that and actually keep them as an employee once you've invested all the training and knowledge they've obtained as employees? Then we're going to talk about how do you retain good talent. That's always an issue. How do you keep people on board? And another topic that always comes up, it seems, in any kind of roundtable with credit managers is how do I incentivize my team? I don't have a budget for it necessarily. How do I keep people motivated and really get them to meet their goals and objectives and incentivize them to do that? So those are the primary topics that we're going to cover today. Let's move on to the next slide. I want to tell you a little bit, for those of you who may not be familiar with it, this is sponsored by the Highako Academy, which is an primarily online resource. We also put on events like this that provides a wide variety of skill training for people in the order to cash space. And we've worked very hard to put some information together that you can look at and really learn desktop level skills that'll help you do your job better. Let's move on to the next slide here. For example, we've broken courses into modules. We have like 2,500 plus training modules and blogs, and we do podcasts and a lot of things that are valuable. I know when I was managing these functions, it would have been extremely useful to be able to present these resources to my team. So a little bit of a commercial here, but the primary purpose is to hear from our panel. So let's go to the next slide here. Okay, so the people involved, I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Highly qualified veterans of credit management wars. We have John La Rocca, Carrie Bratlie, and Len Brown. John, why don't you start and introduce yourself briefly to everyone?
Good morning. I'm John La Rocca. I've spent my career primarily as a credit executive, starting out as a credit analyst with the Hewlett-Packard Company in 1974, eventually being the global credit manager at Hewlett-Packard for a number of years. And I spent about just under 25 years with Hewlett-Packard. More recently, in 12 of the last 13 years, I've led the credit operations for Hitachi Data Systems and Hitachi Vantara globally out of Santa Clara, with shared service centers in Poland, Malaysia, and India. And in between, I've done a variety of things that involve credit and sales in the technology area.
Great. Thank you, John. Carrie?
Good morning. My favorite space to play in is consumer products, but my career spans from tech to toys, with a lot of time spent in construction. And I enjoy building up good teams, and that's really about it. It's pretty quick. Lots of tech out there.
Okay, we'll learn a lot more about you as the conversation goes on. Carrie and Len, how about you?
Hi, I'm Len Brown. I'm the Director of Commercial Credit at Floor & Decor. You may know Floor & Decor is mainly a retailer, which is the bulk of the business, but we have a pretty fast-growing commercial division as well. Prior to that, I spent 25 years with Ferguson Enterprises, which is the largest plumbing wholesaler in the country. And I began my career writing credit reports for Dun & Bradstreet prior to Ferguson Enterprises. So kind of started with credit and moved quite a bit of the way through construction to now a director level.
Terrific. And as for myself, I call myself a recovering credit executive. I was in that space in a variety of industries, manufacturing, distribution, tech, for a number of years. And then along with John, actually, we started a consulting practice. And in that practice have been in pretty much every industry I can imagine, including entertainment and tech and so on. So been through the hoops and started about 3 years ago, helping produce content for Highako. So that's me. So let's move on and get to the meat of the program. Okay, the first thing is a Gartner study recently said about 2/3 of us reported that there's a challenge with talent, that it's hard to find people that are qualified to do the jobs in our space of order to cash. And so we have a poll question that we'd like to have you respond to before we get into the discussion. As a credit manager, what are the challenges that you face in your organization to find qualified people for hiring? So let's put the poll up. We got it going, I hope. There we go. So if you could answer this, and it'll really help us with our discussion as we go forward. We'll have a couple minutes to do this. Okay, let's give it one more minute. Okay, do we have a response that we can share? Okay, interesting. So it looks like yeah, it's almost a three-way tie, that budget constraints are an issue, difficulty finding people that have the right skills. And this is an interesting one that we should talk about, an inability to really attract qualified candidates. That's an interesting one. So well, let's get into and you have an opportunity, by the way, those listening, to ask questions at any time, and we'll try to answer them as we go along here. Okay, well, let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so for the panel, let's go back to hiring qualified applicants. Let's go back to that. There we go. From the panel's point of view, let's start with you, Len. What challenges do you face in terms of in your career, not necessarily immediately, but maybe that's more relevant? What challenges do you face in hiring people that are really qualified to do what you need them to do? Well, you're on mute, Len.
There we go. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
My biggest challenge and what I look for when I'm adding staff in my company is, number one, are they going to fit with the personalities that I already have in place? I'm very sensitive to the people we bring in to make sure that they're going to be a fit so that we don't have conflict. And what I'm looking for, because I'm operating in a high growth environment, is someone who is resilient to change, who can handle change, because we do have to change quite a bit at the growth rate we're at. And then also somebody just has a basic skills and a demonstrated work ethic. It's really challenging. Different people are motivated by different things. So I'm looking for somebody who wants opportunity, has the work ethic to back that up, and can handle change.
Mhm. John, Carrie, you have anything to add to that? Okay. Well, let me ask this way. How do you find these people?
In my particular case, we found that our human resources department, as much as they like to help, they don't really understand what we're looking for in as far as talent and credentials. And we're fortunate to be able to use outside recruiters for that. We have relationships with several recruiters, and they understand the type of people that we're looking for. They understand the environment that we're operating in. Now, you may say that, well, there's a whole lot of cost that goes on with recruiters, and there are some benefits to recruiters, but with the amount of resumes that we receive when we do post a job ad, it's very, very difficult to screen those. And when we've worked with our human resources department, they've oftentimes given us things that really didn't fit with what we were looking for. So we found some successes with outside recruiters, and in the end, we feel like it's worth it for the expense that we have and the time and effort that it would take in order for managers of the department to sift through resumes and find qualified candidates.
John,
Bob, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, because I wanted to answer the previous question, but I'll try to answer it in both regards. At Hitachi, we always had budget constraints because we were in the server space, and the server space is very competitive and it's shrinking. And what we would do was always go after new college graduates. So because they were new graduates, we knew they were trainable because they've just completed a program of 4 years. And we usually went after treasury or accounting majors. And we didn't expect to keep them forever, but we would integrate them successfully in every case into our credit operation in Santa Clara. And we used a similar strategy internationally as well, is to always go after new graduates, because it was a cost issue for Hitachi. We didn't have the option of recruiting more experienced people with the need for larger compensation. And we built the process in a manner that allowed us to incrementally challenge the candidate by giving them responsibility, giving them authority, but coaching them through the process of taking on and more authority. So we gave them authorization to make mistakes as long as they could explain the mistakes that they made. And it usually worked out. We didn't have bad debt issues.
Right. Brad Morris has a question in the chat for us as well.
Yeah, I think that's an
We didn't have
excellent question. His question is, if you post an ad in a newspaper, for example, what's your experience on how many qualified responses do you get? Is it worth doing that?
I find using the online ones, actually, I've hired from LinkedIn and Indeed, and there's another one that escapes my mind right now, but those are the two that I use when I'm getting the digital, and you can check on them. It's a much faster process. We also use Workforce, which brings everything in from the application process all the way through the resume.
Okay, Len, you had a response to that. Len, you want to tell us what your opinion is? Oh, you're on mute again, Len.
Thank you. When we place ads in public forums like that, we get probably 40 to 50 resumes, and Again, it takes a lot of time to go through that, but when we have recruiters working for us who understand the background of everything, we generally within 2 to 3 candidates find what we're looking for, and we're able to make an offer quickly, which to me is kind of important. Although the tide is changing, I would say last year when we were doing most of the hiring that we did recently, if we didn't get that offer out there pretty quick and get the candidate tied down, we would typically lose that candidate to somebody else.
You know, I used to do something quite frequently, and I call it try before you buy. I would go to a staffing company that had, candidates that would fit into the department, and we would bring them in, and we would either let them go because they didn't work out, or we would ultimately hire them. Sometimes there was a penalty to pay based on the arrangement with the staffing company, but it was worth it. It was equivalent of paying a recruiter. Have any of you tried that in the past, and did it work or not work? What do you think?
Yes, I just converted in the last year. I converted 4 of my team from, as you say, the try to buy. So we have a wonderful agency. I think they're also mostly on the West Coast that we use, that brings me in temps, and then we either hire or we ask them to go to the next company.
Yeah, it's you might have some churn and burn there, but it in my view that worked out quite well in my past experience. John, do you have anything to add there, or Len?
We did not utilize that path. No.
Okay. Last question in this kind of segment that we're in now is, what are you looking for? Now, John, you've responded to this already, I think, quite well, but what are you looking for in terms of the qualifications of a new hire in your department as a credit analyst or collector or cash applier, whatever it is that you're hiring? You mentioned, Len, you're looking for a cultural fit, that they'll fit in the culture of your department. What other attributes do you think are really important in a new hire?
I like to have a little bit of related experience in there. My positions can handle a entry-level person, but it's much easier if there's a little bit of experience. I start to get concerned when there's 10, 15 years for our particular positions, because we have so much change and not a standard system that you're going to see at other companies, that sometimes the candidates are resistant to change at that point in their career. They've kind of got some habits and they know how they like to work, and it may not be a match for us.
Carrie, do you have anything to add?
I do. I ask in the interview process sort of your hobbies, and what I'm looking for when I'm talking to someone is, do you read books? Are you a puzzle? Do you like Sudoku? Do you solve things? So what I'm listening for when I ask, kind of like, tell me about yourself, I'm actually listening to see whether or not you want to tear apart something. And it may not be evident but if somebody says, and I say, what do you do on a rainy day? Because we're in Seattle. And they say, oh, I do puzzles, or I do Sudoku, or I do something like that's kind of the one that's going to move up the list for me, because AR is a gigantic puzzle. And if you can't tear it apart and deal with the change that comes from that, you're not going to be happy.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I was asked a lot of weird questions. At least I was told by people I ultimately hired that were weird questions. But I asked, what's the greatest challenge you've ever faced in your career? And it's pretty revealing. I mean, it's a basic question, but it's kind of revealing. It's either something that's kind of a no-brainer, or it was really a challenge. And what was the result? How did you handle it? What was the result? My favorite question was, tell me about the greatest failure you've had in your career so far. And frankly, if they tell me never had one, there's the door. I want to talk to the next person, because we've all failed and we learn from our failures. And so that's another thing, and the indicator of the true experience. Anything else to add on this question? Anybody?
I
Well,
would,
think
I
that's
would,
Go ahead,
Go
John.
ahead, John.
I would comment on your comment, Bob, that that's a very important question. Because when you're young, and with no disrespect to the young, I remember when that was, but I can't remember what it felt like. But when you're young, you don't have the opportunity to recognize your failures. As you get longer in your career and you reflect on yourself more, I think it's easier to point out your own failures. But when I was young, it was difficult for me to understand where I had failed. And failures, to be able to articulate your failures is essential. I think it's an ingredient that gets people hired. If you answer that question particularly well, I think that's a differentiating question. So I would support your observation, Bob.
Yeah, so just to encapsulate what we've discussed so far, how do you hire top talent? You ask them questions that really reveal who they really are. And you're trying to look for somebody that is going to be a valid team member that can complement your group based on the work ethic that you demand. Hiring younger people, they are moldable. You definitely, in my view, you want to have a combination of people that are more tenured and people coming in who may pass through your department ultimately, as John said, and move on to other areas. And that blend really adds quality and some continuous energy in your department. So anyway, that's and I think we've given some good advice. Recruiters, various ads, and staffing companies would be a place to look.
I'd like to add in a little bit to your comments earlier, Bob, if it's okay.
Yeah, please.
When we're talking about interview questions, one thing I found is that people will prepare for those interviews by utilizing the internet and all that kind of stuff. So they may come to the interview with canned answers for general interview questions that are very popular. You know, I think the only one that I use with that to start off is tell me about yourself. And that's really just more of an icebreaker to kind of get the conversation going. But I don't ever ask them, have you ever done this? Have you ever done that? Did anybody ever say this to you, and how did you handle that? I try to ask the questions such that they have to tell me the story, and then that gives them an opportunity to elaborate on what they did, and they're doing the talking. They don't really have a way to gauge what I'm looking for in that question, and that way I get an honest answer out of them, and I can make the assessment that I need out of the answer that they give me to that question.
Yeah, and always watch the eyes. That's very revealing. Always watch the eyes. Well, let's move on to the next topic here. Okay, so career growth. This is a big deal. What do you see as the key elements of helping your staff into their desired roles, either promotion or moving elsewhere in the company? How do you do that? And do you have a formal developmental action program? How does that work? Let's start with you, Len.
In our case, we've utilized performance reviews along with interviewing the associate to understand what their goals are. And through the performance reviews, we can understand what their potential limitations or where there are areas that they need to develop more in. And we create the plan together with the associate. And we put it into a specific plan with specific milestones as well. So we'll give them, for instance, Highako is a piece of the training program that we have. So we'll assign videos from there. We also utilize LinkedIn Learning in addition to homegrown training materials that we have. But in my view, it needs to be a team effort between the associate and that associate's manager. so that everybody's on the same page and we're all working towards the same goal.
John or Carrie, did you, in your career experience, how have you handled this?
What we've done, in my experience, is to tell the candidate as they're the neophyte in the organization, they may walk in knowing what they want to do longer term or not knowing it. And what I sit down with each of them and would explain is, I'm going to prepare you first to be a first level manager, a regional credit manager. I'm going to prepare you to be a global credit director. And the things that I'm going to work with you on are all transferable. It's good listening skills, building action plans, being able to measure your own performance and the performance of others, and good communication skills. And I'm going to give you the opportunity to work in a place where you're uncomfortable some of the time. I'm going to give you responsibility. And regardless if you want to be a first level credit manager, a region credit manager, or director of credit, these are going to be transferable skills if you want to move into other areas of finance or sales or wherever you want to take your career. I'm going to challenge you, and we're going to give you more responsibility than you think you're ready for. And that will help fast track you, and it keeps people engaged and interested. And it's a partnership, and it replaces the money that I could never offer them because they find the work more interesting and intriguing, and it makes them feel more valuable in the community of our credit organization. It's been my experience.
Excellent. Carrie, you have anything to add?
I would agree with that. And in my current position, I've got two of my people are attending university in one way or another. One's working on a master's, the other one's working on a double bachelor. I know that they're not long for my team, and I'm delighted to watch them and watch them grow where we're at. And we've talked about it, and it was very uncomfortable when I brought it up to them to begin with. I'm like, look, you're about to outgrow this. You know, you are getting a degree in statistics, for crying out loud. While I'd love to keep that, I know that you need to move on. So let me help you with the right department and introduce you to the right people internally and upstream, so that you've got a door open for you as soon as you've got that onion sheet in your hand.
Yeah, I think there's two pieces to this to kind of tap onto what the rest of you have said. Is it should be something that is formalized, that this is your developmental steps. This is what you need to do to get from point A to the desired point B. But ultimately, the individual is responsible for their own actions. So they either accomplish the milestones that have been laid out, or they don't. The other thing, the second thing, is be honest. I remember there was one individual we were trying to develop into a management role, and we had lots of things set out for him, and frankly, he didn't accomplish them. There was characteristics about him that just didn't fit into a management role, and we ultimately had to tell him that this isn't going to happen. And we did it in a way that we retained him. He stayed in his position because we were very frank and honest with the guy. So I think that's another essential element. Let me ask this, and then we'll move on to the next topic. In your view, what differentiates, what attributes are you looking for differentiates an individual contributor from a supervisor or a manager? So somebody listening to this who wants to go up the organizational ladder, what's the differentiator you would be looking for? John, why don't you start this one off?
I was trying to write down what I know to give you an answer in about 10 minutes after everybody else got a chance to talk. But I think it's a conversation with the person, and it's observing the person. And bringing in credit analyst, which is the area where I focused, you are managing your responsibility. You're managing a set of accounts. You're managing a relationship with sales and a relationship with the customer's controllership.
Well, I think we might have lost your audio, John.
We have a question in the chat as well.
Okay, why don't we, maybe we can pick John up after that. How important are the selling and persuasion skills in credit, especially when you're pitching a high risk, high value proposal to an executive committee? How do you transform yourself from a credit, just a numbers person, to somebody that has persuasive skills? That's a really interesting thing, and it's a developmental thing as well. What if, John, are you back with us?
I am back, I think. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can. Why don't you finish what you were going to say, and then maybe segue into that it's a very relevant question. And I think it's relevant to this. How do you ascend from supervisory to management? It takes the kind of skills that this fellow is asking about. What do you think?
So credit analysts are supervisors to begin with. They're supervisors of customer relationships and relationships with sales. And then do they want to add the people element to it? And
we're having audio problems, John. Why don't we regroup back to John in a moment?
do you
Okay. John, you're kind of going in and out. Carrie, let's move on, and John can join us back in a moment. Carrie, what are the differentiators you see, and how does somebody kind of progress from a numbers person to somebody that can actually promote their position effectively?
I think that a highly qualified credit and collections person is also a salesperson at the end of the day. They need to be able to sell the yay or the nay. I have never in my entire career turned down a sale. I've turned down terms, but I've never turned down a sale. And it's differentiating how you go from going, well, here, these are what these numbers say, and this is what I put into our analytics, and it says no. I'm like, well, but in increasing sales, especially going, across the world, you're gonna have to take on some risks. So how are you gonna do that? What are you gonna do? You're gonna use the letter of credit. Well, you've got to be very educated in your resources to get paid. And it's not just here's my ACH. There's different ways to get paid. So it's elevating that. It's being creative. It's understanding that we're trying to get to yes. Yes, I'm going to sell you this. I may not sell it to you the way you want it, but I'm going to sell you this product. So it's a creativity and it's an understanding. But the credit and collections department is equal or more than the sales department. The sales department gets the purchase order. After that, the relationship with the client is on my team.
Yeah, very, very critical skills. Len, do you have anything to add?
Well, I would just say I agree with Carrie. We're all in sales, and maintaining that relationship with the customer, if it's not done properly, can undermine everything the sales department has done. So I think that's a very important. And with regard to the audience, if you're talking to executives or if you're talking to salespeople, you need to differentiate that so that you understand what's important to those individuals. The sales guy just wants to get that order processed so he can get his commission or add to his sales numbers for the month. The executives, on the other hand, probably have a different view of that, and is this a profitable sale? Is this one we're going to be able to collect, or is it going to end up in a loss later? And you need to be able to talk the language of your audience.
Yeah, that's so important. There's to tap onto what you both said. There was a saying that I just love this. I never say no. I say yes, but how? That's to Carrie's point. How am I going to do this? And you might not like it, but there's a way. There is a way, and I think that's incredibly important. And I had a boss, in fact, this first time I took on a global role in credit, and I was working for a treasurer, and there was a a real issue, and I wasn't quite sure how to handle it. I went to him and he said, Bob, if you're always any decision you make, if it's to the benefit of the company, you can't go wrong. And so to your point, Len, if you can illustrate how it's to the benefit of your company to do something or to not do something, then you know, that's a great way to enter the conversation. There are sometimes overriding business issues that regardless of that, you'll be overridden, but at least you're doing your best to do what's in the best interest of your company. And I don't think you can go wrong there. John, do we have you back for just a moment, and we'll move on to the next topic? If not,
I am here. I don't know if you can hear me, but I'm here.
yeah, we can hear you now. Once you finish your thought, and then we'll move on.
Well, the question was about transitioning from credit to selling to management. If I understood that question that you had read, Bob.
Yep, that's it.
I don't think you change. I think you're consistent. I've never been in a situation where the CFO's office or the Treasury office didn't appreciate the importance of what credit and collection did. And we would always challenge our organization to stay lean to begin with. And when cutbacks came, they very seldom, if ever, touched credit and collections, because what we did was essential to supporting the cash flow of the organization. I never found that I had to argue to maintain my resources or for more resources. I had to live with this fact that I may not have had a generous budget, but I was never asked to diminish my budget because the importance of managing cash flow was so essential to the company.
Lucky you, John.
I know.
I did not. There's a couple of environments I worked in where that would have been a wonderful thing. But let's move on to the next topic, because I think we can tie in what we're talking about here quite well. There we go. One more back, one there. Whoop. Okay, retaining your top talent. Well, you know, if you have people who have the basic skill sets to move up the organization, you know, what do you do to help them do that? We talked about developmental action planning and so on, but how do you recognize the various motives of your staff to keep them motivated, keep them retained, whether they're, let's just go back to the idea, somebody who's a credit analyst, and they say, you know what, I want to be a supervisor. How do you use that energy and turn it around into retaining them so they're not going to bolt and go to another company? How do you do that? Len, you want to dive into this one?
Sure. Well, I think that goes back to the development plan. Even if you aren't able to provide the money or the opportunity immediately, and in some cases people ask for that and they're already ready for it. In other cases, you have to develop that. But again, I think the biggest piece of that is making sure that associate is always growing and always moving forward and advancing their skill set. And just to kind of go back to previously what we were talking about, we had management and supervisor in the same sentence. I see those two things as different. I see a supervisor as somebody who ensures that the tasks are completed and that the associates are doing what they are supposed to do every day. A manager, on the other hand, in my view, is someone who can look beyond those tasks and see what needs to be done in the next 6 months or a year, and has that outward vision and can communicate that to the people that report to them. And that's where I see the differences there. So sometimes it's really just taking someone who is a supervisor and trying to get them think differently about that and think more along management lines, if that's where they ultimately want to go.
Carrie and John, what do you do to calibrate a level of dissatisfaction among your team so that they don't leave and you're surprised, what would you suggest people listening here? What would you suggest they do?
So Bob, you're going to be surprised, but I've never had dissatisfied people in my organization.
Of course.
And the reason is because we would level set from day one. This is what the whole organization looks like. We discuss the performance of the whole organization, the structure of the organization, the opportunity for individual growth, and when the opportunity is there for a supervisor, a first level manager, or a more senior position comes up, they would see and know what's going on. We share all the information regularly in internal meetings, and we try to give them the opportunity to have one-on-one time to answer any questions that they have, but also force feed them all the information so they can see the steps we go through to manage the performance of the organization. And the Blue Book plan, when I was with a public company, or the quarterly analysis, the CFO, they're part of the building of that presentation. So they feel empowered because they're part of that development of that plan, part of the delivery of that plan. And they see what the organization looks like. They know where the opportunities are going to be. And that helps them calibrate themselves with, I want to stay here and move in that direction because this is a place that I enjoy being, or I have other aspirations. And we give them the opportunity to move to those other opportunities when they're ready for it, when they determine that they're ready for it.
John, I hope everybody listening really listened to you carefully. I think that is just excellent advice. And it boils down to trust. You're sharing things with your team. You trust them and they'll trust you. And it's very fluid communication both ways. You're communicating things to them that will help them understand what the objectives are and their opportunities within your organization, and they're sharing back and one-on-ones and so on. Quite excellent. Carrie, do you have anything to add?
I do. Transparency is key to all of this, and to John's point. And in my career, I've had a couple of people who, though, while we've been very transparent, they just don't see that they've got some growth to do. And that's when we kind of butt heads. And so if you've got someone that you just, I think a little more transparency with a little more push to, I see that you see yourself in this position, but being a manager is not a bully and you're acting like a bully. So in a couple positions that I've had before, I've had to tone people down and go, I understand that you would like a promotion, but right now that's not available for you. And they've actually stayed with me and grown in different directions, but what they thought they wanted, they really did not have the aptitude or the it was not within them to do that. So we've had to work around that.
You know, it seems to me that a department is really configured with three types of individuals. One is the keeper, the one that likes what they do. They don't want to promote. They have outside activities. They just want to do a good job. And to comments that have been previously made, you challenge those people. You give them, things that exercise their intellect and challenge them a little bit, and they feel good about that. Then there's the people that want to promote within your department. And we've talked about how to do that. And these actions we're talking about, you're going to retain those if you do some of the things we've been talking about. Then there's the float throughs. And these are the young people that you hire. They're going to be in your department for a while, and then they're going to move on. I think retain valuable employees means your company retains them. Yes. And what you want to do is retain that intellectual equity that you've built over time with your employees. Let's move on to the last topic here, and we'll wrap her up. And again, we're looking for any questions. I see it. Any questions that you might have, we'll address them. But this always comes up. How do I keep people charged up? What do I do? I mean, I can give away a few bucks now and then for somebody who did something wonderful. What do I do? So let's talk about this. What have you done? Let's start with Carrie this time. What have you done to really keep your employees incentivized, feel good about coming in the morning and doing the best job they can?
We're in a particular area where we're trying to do some cleanup. So right now we're getting ready for a new system, which we all know what that means. And so right now, it's a scorecard, what got cleaned up. And as different people take the number one position, depending upon what they're doing and how they're getting the two systems clean, it's really fun to see in our group chat how happy, it's like, I'm number one. And then whoever's in the basement's like, yeah, I'm getting out of that place. And it's been really fun. And it is a group event, because at the end of the day, we all need a clean system. So if somebody's having issues, and we've dealt with quite a bit of grief this last year, and my team has stepped up, and when somebody's lost a spouse or somebody significant to them, a parent or a spouse, the rest of the team literally has gone into their portfolio, managed it, and then stepped back when the person came back in. Now, I could not be happier as a manager to watch that, because it was organic. I didn't ask for it. They just did it.
That's excellent. Len, what do you do? You do anything specific to keep your folks motivated?
We try to promote a team environment. We've had virtual happy hours. We've where we have the budget for it. We've tried to have events as well that everyone can enjoy, and just that are outside of work. But our biggest incentive really is, and we're fortunate to have this, is the growth piece. So again, when I'm doing the interview process, I'm looking for people who are motivated and want to grow, and we can certainly provide that within the department. So that's the main incentive that we use.
What about you, John? Any suggestions?
Well, before COVID and during COVID and since COVID, we had a key manager who we didn't pay remarkably well because of budget constraints, but we created flexibility because that manager also had children at home. And before COVID, we allowed that person to work part-time from home. During COVID, when everyone worked from home, and then when COVID started to wind down, we came up not only at the credit level, but company-wide, and we told our employees, you never have to come back to the office again. We're going to provide you with as much flexibility as possible, because we felt we had good measurements in place. And certainly within credit and collections, that has not been a problem, even though I left Hitachi at the end of 2021. I still stay in touch as an advisor to my colleagues there. And they remain to be an organization. If you want to work from home, you can work from home. If you want to modify your hours so that you can integrate life work integration as opposed to life work balance, because you're always doing life and work at the same time, it seems, rather than at one time or the other. Being flexible with your employees was the greatest incentive that we could provide during these years of the COVID, pre-COVID, and now post-COVID.
Yeah, I just add some specific thoughts, because I think we've all operated where there wasn't much of a budget. I mean, it'd be wonderful to take the team out and do something, but there isn't much of a budget. So it's little things. People like recognition. So if somebody accomplishes something that's special, I used to give this rotating statue away called Filbert at one company I worked for. And if somebody did something really spectacular, the whole team was alerted. They stood up in front of everybody, because we were all in the same place then. and they got to keep it. And the salespeople would come by. What's that? Well, that's Filbert. It was something that really charged them up, that gave them recognition. Send something home, two movie tickets, and send it in for the spouse to be involved. Have your team be recognized in your company website or newsletter if you have one. Things like this. People that work in positions like we have, unlike laborers, aren't necessarily money motivated. They're motivated by recognition, development, and you can really incentivize them. And the title here, I think, is very relevant: incentivizing your team. And if your team is incentivized, that means everybody in it is working together, and they're also incentivized. Before we end this, any other comments that you'd like to share with the audience? So Len, Carrie, or John?
We have another question in the chat, Bob.
Well, let's look at it. Let's see. This is a good one. How much does good technology improve morale, or on its head? How much does bad technology demoralize a team? That's an interesting question. Anybody have an opinion on this one they'd like to share?
I do. Great technology is very helpful, and when it works, if you're using something that takes 10 clicks to put in a claim, that's not working. That's onerous on the team, and it's more painful, and it is demoralizing. It's a perfect word for it, and it's not helpful. So when you're picking your technology as a manager, I strongly suggest lots and lots of testing. Talk to a users group. Don't just listen to the salesperson. And as much as I love sales, go find somebody that's using that piece of equipment before you buy it.
Anything else, Len or John? I got something. And this ties everything together. As a manager, and most of the people listening here are at a management level, as I understand it, it's very important to be a strong advocate for your department. If you want to incentivize people, you want a team spirit, you want to retain employees, they need to know that you're actively working in their interest. If something's not working, go crazy. Talk to whoever you have to talk to, demand that things that are broken get fixed, and your department will see that, and that's extremely valuable. So anyway, let's move on to the next slide, and if there's any other questions, we'll answer them in the remaining few minutes, but let's move on. Are we moving on? We seem to have a little gap in the slide progression here. Are there any other questions that anyone would like to share in the chat while we're waiting? Okay, can we progress the slide, please? Well, let me just take the remaining time to tell you that the Highako Academy, as I mentioned, we have lots and lots of really valuable information. Some of it I produce, but we've got some excellent instructors ranging in topics from order to cash to treasury and technology as well. So please take advantage of that. Take a look at the website, see what would be valuable to your department. And coming next week, we have two sessions, one on negotiations and one pertaining to financial statement analysis. I'll be conducting them. They're free of charge. We have a limit of 50 people for each session, short notice, but if you're able to, or you have your staff able to attend, I would really encourage it. We're going to cover the topics related to two of our courses. And these courses include a number of individual tutorial topics that build into negotiating with different personality types, etc. And I'd really encourage you to attend. You'll get a view of what the entire course can deliver for you. And then the other one is on financial statement analysis and credit analysis, looking at information that you would utilize for that purpose. So I would encourage you to, there we go. I would encourage you to, if you can, to attend, and I think you'll find it quite informative. So anyway, there you go. And want to show how people can register to that event, either of those events? Do we have we have a slide on how they can actually participate? No, I guess not. Well, if you go to our website, academy.highako.com, I'm sure you can find the ability to join us. I really encourage you to do that.
And there's also a link in the chat. There's a link directly to it.
Oh, okay, terrific. There's a link in the chat if you want to take a look at it. I really encourage you to go or have your staff go. I think it'll be valuable to you, and it's less than an hour, so it doesn't take a lot of time, either of these. Panel, thank you very much. You have any closing comments to wrap it up based on the questions we've got? Anything? We survived.
Thank you for the opportunity to join you today, Bob.
Yeah, what a great group of brain power here. I think the people listening certainly got a lot out of this. These jobs are hard, and everybody sitting here you're looking at right now has been doing this for a long time. So hopefully we were able to give you some pearls of wisdom. And we look forward to seeing you next time.
Great job, everyone. Really enjoyed it.
Okay. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.